Okay, so one last pitching drill that I'd like to just explain to you, known as the lasso drill. The idea of it being called the lasso drill is because generally, with high-level throwers, pitchers, high-level ball players, this is a drill that they tend to do where they allow their arm to come out a little wide, similar to like tossing a lasso. It can be problematic for a young player to let their arm get a little bit too wide and too low. It can put a lot of stress on the elbow because then the arm kind of starts to operate not so much with the trunk and the pec doesn't get quite as engaged. Shoulder gets stressed out, elbow gets stressed out. So with this drill, don't let them get a little bit too wide. But also at the same time, getting the arm too high can be a bit of a problem. I mean, if we're talking about how different players on the baseball field are going to throw, outfielders are generally going to be throwing from a little bit higher because they want that good backspin and they want the ball to ride as long as they can. Whereas you'll find a lot of infielders, big league level, kind of all levels, tend to throw a little bit lower with their arm because they're not throwing as far, and the ball out of their hand might kind of tail a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal because they're usually only throwing 90, 120 feet. But that arm out here is going to make a big difference for an outfielder because then when the ball is trying to travel 200 plus feet, that ball is going to move a lot and it's going to get off track. But generally, as a pitcher, it's okay for a player to be somewhere in through here, kind of 3/4. Again, as I said, a player that gets too high with their arm, that's probably an indication of the shoulders tilting over a little bit too much. Whereas a kid that throws a little bit wide, their shoulders are staying very, very square, which is okay, but we don't want the arm to drop down here too much. In terms of structure, wherever the spine and the shoulder is, the arm kind of wants to come out in line with the shoulder. So we don't want it to be too wide, but we don't want it to be too tall. We want the kid to kind of stay upright with their spine, upright with their head, and knowing that the arm is going to come a little bit over the top. Now, all I mean when I say over the top is above the line of the shoulders. So the whole idea with this lasso drill, toes are kind of facing forward. We're taking the hips out of it, we're taking the lower half kind of out of it, and they're kind of starting here. A lot of kids have a tendency when they load their arm up, a lot of goofy stuff is happening with the hand. A lot of kids when they're coming out to throw the baseball, they'll actually cut the baseball and their thumb will end up kind of up as they throw the ball. High level throwers, it's kind of more a matter of pronating. So what ends up happening is the thumb kind of turns down. We don't want to worry about that too much yet. What we want to do is we want to make sure that they're able to really stay behind the baseball and finish through the baseball. In time, if kids learn how to pronate through their delivery, that's a good thing. And if you notice you have a kid that kind of does turn their thumb down as they throw to really empty the system out and get rid of the baseball, it's okay. Too hard of a pronation is going to turn into more of a change-up screwball type of thing. And too much of the opposite of kind of supination where the thumb ends up pointing up, that's a problem too. Ball's going to kind of cut this way. This ball's going to kind of trail out this way. So all we're doing with the lasso drill is we're putting in a position here where they're already pretty squared up. Their fingers in the baseball are facing where they're squared to. So for me as a lefty thrower, if I'm a pitcher, baseball is kind of facing towards first base. For any righty, their arm and their finger and their hand is in a position where the baseball is facing third base. We don't want them to have the baseball facing towards second base because as they then turn, they're going to have to cut this way to get the baseball to come forward, and that can cause a lot of problems. We also don't want the baseball facing home plate because then as they turn, they're going to have to overpronate, and that could cause a lot of problems too. Setting ourselves up so we're pretty lined up, not too open, not too closed, pretty lined up. Toe is facing our target, a little closed, not here, but not too here. Pretty lined up, but still a little bit closed. And all we're doing is having them start with the baseball facing that same spot they're squared up to. And all they're going to do is hold this position, and from here, as they turn to go, they're going to just let their arm come out to where it needs to come out to, not allowing it to be too low, not allowing it to be too high. So a lousy rep would be them starting here and then pulling and getting their shoulders all out of alignment and then kind of throwing from here. Again, over the top doesn't mean directly over the top. It just means over the top of the level of the shoulders. That's a safe spot, and that's where we want to kind of be. Another poor rep would be if they start here and then the arm just immediately slings out wide, here to here. That's another poor rep. We're looking for kind of that 3/4-ish window, maybe a little higher than 3/4, maybe a little bit lower is okay. But we're allowing the player to just let their arm go out to where it kind of feels like it needs to. So we're here, set up, elbow good height, front foot a little bit opened up, not too closed, not too open here, and we're looking for that arm as we turn to just come out and find a bit of a 3/4 slot. That's a good solid lasso drill rep right there.